like making some serious money. So at the end of
All right, guys. Well, welcome back to the Young Startup. We're doing some back-to-back episodes today, and today we're going to be sitting down with one of our partners in a couple of our businesses, which is phenomenal, but also just someone that we went to high school with, and he's been an absolute hustler. We're out of high school now, of course, but we're going to dive in and just talk about general business and entrepreneurship and things along those lines. So, Nick Sanders, if you can do a quick little introduction to yourself.
Yeah, my name's Nick Sanders. I started kind of entrepreneurship really young. Started like it was high school basically. I started woodshop selling, making pens, and I kind of got the entrepreneurship bug like super early in my life. Started with that, kind of progressed. Knew I always wanted to do something for myself, so played the 9-to-5 game up until I was about 19, 20 years old. Kind of in the industry that I was working in the cannabis industry, I saw opportunity to kind of branch out. There was kind of a gap in the market of the packaging side of things. People weren't really doing the packaging, as you guys kind of know. Yeah. Capitalized on that. Found a business partner that I brought in, another guy that we all went to school with, Ethan. Basically just kind of brainstormed with him. He had approached me, wanted to start another business, and I kind of approached him and said, hey, let's do this instead. I think it's way better. Fast forward 3 years, we've got basically oh boy, what are we at now? I think we've done about $16-17 million in revenue up to date now. We've got about 16 employees, about 6,000 square feet of office space. So yeah, it's been really great. It's a really fun business to be in for sure. Nice being your own boss and kind of doing that thing. So yeah, no, it's been great.
Cool, man.
I love that. Go ahead. This happens a lot.
I love chatting about 9-to-5. I think it's very traditional for people to either go the 9-to-5 route or go school and 9-to-5. So first of all, did you go to school? And if you didn't, why didn't you do that? And what's kind of your perspective on it?
Yeah, I kind of have a very non-traditional perspective on school, as you guys know. I didn't go to school. I grew up being basically not pressured, but kind of led in the direction of going to school. Obviously my parents and my grandparents and family were like, you need to go to school, you need to get an education, you need to do this, and it just wasn't for me. I hated school. I was an honor roll student up until grade 10, and then about that time I was like, yeah, this ain't for me. I don't want to do this. So it was up until that point I was kind of really not sure. At one point I wanted to be a cop, and at one point I wanted to go be like a lawyer, and it was just something that never really came to fruition. And in the back of my mind, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but having all these outside sources kind of, pressuring me, and everything you hear of, you have to go to school and you have to go buy a house and have a family and, put in your RSPs and then retire. It's something that was really with me for a while. And then I kind of started to think for myself and branch out. And it was an easy decision for me after that to kind of decide that that's not the route I want to take. I think everyone has to start off with a 9-to-5. You have to start off with that, build some savings up, build it to the point where you can, leave your 9-to-5, right? So that takes a long time sometimes. Sometimes it's quick, just depends on really where you're at, how good at saving money you are. I think having good money habits is huge, especially when you're young, right?
Yeah.
So
100%.
That's something that I still see a lot of people I know struggle with at 25, 30, 40 years old, So getting out of that kind of loop and not following the status quo, I think is huge.
Yeah.
To this day, I still have $80,000 in a RESP my grandparents set up for me that I'll never get to use. So I'm not going to go to school. It's just not for me, right? And I think that kind of falls on into how I hire, for my businesses. To be honest, out of the 40 to 60 people I've hired in the last 5 years, I've probably looked at 3 resumes. I don't really look at resumes. It just doesn't really mean anything to me. I don't care if you got a degree, and I don't care if you've gone to school and done this. At the end of the day, if you can do the job and you can meet the expectations, then there's really no need for me to have that. Obviously there's industries. If you want to go be a doctor, you got to go to school. There's certain things like that, but for at least the businesses I'm in, it's not something that I even look at or really care for. I care about results, and I care about passion, and loyalty is really what it is.
Absolutely. Totally. I'd like to kind of go down the route of you got into the high deal, you saw this opportunity, you saw, working in 9-to-5 and all this, you had to save to get started ultimately. Yeah. But when you first started High Deal, did it cost a lot to get started? Number one.
Yeah.
Hope you're cool with us talking about High Deal, of course. But did it cost a lot to get started? You saw this gap in the industry. Obviously, you working in that industry prior to. But that first initial year is always the hardest for entrepreneurs. It costs money. There's a lot of risks, a lot of time. How much were you spending, time-wise? And what were some of the initial struggles that kind of came starting with a business or starting up a business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it started off I was still working my 9 to 5 in that industry, right? So, I mean, it was basically going to work. I was the GM of a pretty big dispensary that was kind of ran for a long time, and it required a lot of my time to kind of do. So I did rely on, my partner a lot to kind of run the day-to-day of the business while I was working to basically fund it. So that's accompanied with, savings that we had both had. I think our initial investment was around like 60 grand. We put that in. And, we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, like anybody is, right? We bought a lot of stuff that, we saw at the time was going to be really popular. But, as time went on, we were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have bought that. And it's kind of those hard lessons you learn at the beginning that I think makes it better and easier down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning I was probably putting in probably 40 to 50 hours a week just outside of my regular 40 to 50 hours a week. So, I mean, it's something that, it's you kind of got to, there's give and take, right? It's balance, right? Like you're not going to get there unless you put in the work, You're not going to get a successful business by working, an hour after work every day at the beginning. Once it's set up, maybe, for sure. But I mean, at the beginning, it's kind of grind mode. You got to really put the time in.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really good at the beginning. I was lucky enough to have a lot of contacts already in the industry I was in, which made it a lot easier. I wasn't starting from nothing, so that really helped too. But we started out of my house. We were there for probably 6-7 months. Just kind of running it, getting our groundwork, trying to figure everything out. And then as time went on, we got a warehouse. We hired a sales guy. We hired a designer, and we just kind of scaled from there.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that you at the end of the day you start with a vision and a goal, and then you just progressively move and take baby steps forward in order to do that. And I know you guys did a lot on the front end to minimize risk, but there was always going to be risk with any kind of startup at the end of the day. But you guys identified the opportunity and you guys took action on it, which is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
My question to you is when it comes to you said you 4 years now, 3 years?
We've had High Deal since July. It's been incorporated since July of 2018.
2018.
So going on almost 3.5.
3.5 years and over $50 million in sales. So let's talk about that and kind of the growth from year to year. What did it take from a manpower standpoint, an opportunity standpoint? And I imagine over time, you build more credibility for your name, and then people start to buy more. And if you build good relationships, you'll have more recurring revenue. So what's kind of your approach in terms of scaling and growing?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is not scaling too fast. And we've learned hard lessons like that too, where, we were like, okay, let's do this. We ended up dropping almost 100 grand on an ERP system that realistically we didn't really need at the time. And we don't even use it now. And that was a hard lesson where we spent so much money to implement it and get it going, and it's just, we didn't need it at the time. And so having that that was really early on, so we kind of learned our lesson really quick, but it's really about management of funds coming in, what business you have, kind of on the foresight, and, being able to manage your employees, being able to manage, your AP, your AR, there's rent, there's hydro, there's taxes. That's a big thing too that I think a lot of people forget about is you got to pay the tax man, and the tax man wants a lot, right? So there's ways around, not ways around it, but there's, benefits and grants and, tax loopholes that you can kind of fall into that you can save yourself that.
Yeah.
But making sure you're staying up to date on your taxes is one of the biggest things that we should have done more in the beginning. Luckily we learned that lesson now, but it's really important for these little things I think a lot of people forget about.
100%.
You got to pay WCB, you got to pay, your source deductions and stuff like that, right? So but yeah, I mean we've been really lucky, and we've been really good for how fast we were able to scale. Our first year I think we did about 400K. 2018, so it was about 6 months worth of time. 2019, I think we did around, I think it was 800K. So we basically 2x year over year. 19 we did about 1.1. 20 we did 2.3. And this year to date, I think we're sitting around 6 or 7 million.
Fuck yeah.
So it's been really good, and we have a lot. Now that the credibility is there that we've built and the rapport that we've built with everyone, we have recurring customers that spend 200 grand a month with us, 300 grand a month with us, right? So it takes time to build that. It's not 100%. Something that happens overnight. And I think a lot of people forget about that, and they just kind of see the dollar signs and they're like, oh shit, I can jump into this and I have a good idea and it's just going to take off. Well, in reality, it's not. It's unless there's those rare occasions where it does, but for the most part, it's not. It's you got to put in the time, the sweat equity. As our good friend Gary Vee says, and do stuff like that to get to that level. And scaling slowly and managing your scalability is huge too. We've been really lucky to have a very low employee turnover rate. I mean, we have a lot of the same employees we've had for the last 3 years, and anyone that has left is generally just to go pursue school or to pursue a different job opportunity. There hasn't been anybody really that's not worked out or that I don't think I've had to fire anybody there. I don't think so. No, I'm pretty sure everybody there has been pretty good. So
which kind of goes back to hiring based off of passion.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like myself and Eric, we have about 15, 20 people on our team current state, and a lot of the hiring that we do is a lot of these things are trainable. So as long as they're teachable, that's like the biggest thing.
It is, for sure.
Right.
So hustle mentality.
What I heard a lot of when you're chatting was like essentially like projecting and cash flowing and budgeting, essentially like allocating money and funds so that you can pay all these different things, but still have money and a clear sight of like incoming cash flow from like recurring clients or new clients or pipeline people within your sales. So kind of making safe projections and assumptions off of that allowed you to, for example, bring on more people in order to sell more contracts and things along those lines. So it came down to us. Came down to that. When it comes to, what was I going to say? When it comes down to like having a distribution, you guys are a distribution company at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, we've kind of jumped like when we
full
first
service now.
Yeah, like when we started.
That's what I wanted to chat about, like diversification, how you guys saw new pockets of opportunity and how you implement that into your business.
Yeah, so when we started out, we were for all the American people that are probably listening to this, cannabis just got legalized in like 2018 here, right? So we had started it just before, it was October of 2018 when they legalized it. So we had started just before that kind of mark. So when we had started it, we were not really sure how that was going to look yet. It was kind of a really big move for Canada to federally legalize marijuana, and we had kind of built our business around the dispensaries that were around at the time and, kind of more of that gray area market. And so we bought a lot of stuff that we saw was being used, and then legalization happened. And we found very quickly that these guys weren't using any of that stuff. And, we spent probably 40 grand on stock inventory that just didn't sell because everything switched, right? So, we slowly, kind of branched off into other avenues to bring more income streams. We knew design was going to be huge. Everybody needs design work done. So, and that's kind of evolved into being one of our very large pillars of our business, is design work and creative services. We do a lot of that for the legal producers. We do a lot of stuff for other businesses and other markets too. So, but yeah,
service arm.
Yeah, it's like full service stuff. So now we do like design, we do consulting, we do packaging, we do newsletters and marketing material for cannabis companies. We do setup of machines and equipment, supplies, flexible packaging, pretty much anything that is in the cannabis industry except the actual growing of it itself and packaging of it.
Cool. Diversification at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's really what it's about, right? And you have to diversify. And the thing that we learned too was like, there was months where we had where at the beginning it was like, oh, no one's buying packaging. Well, no one's buying packaging. Once we brought design into there, if we had a down month where we weren't doing packaging, but we still had our design, that was going well, and vice versa, it offsets that. So you're not like going months without having any income or months where you're in the tank. You have to have all these other options so that in case something happens or, there's just a lull in the market for that time, that you have a backup and you have another income stream to be able to keep your lights on, right?
100%. I agree with that. It's very similar with Amazon. Like, we always tell people to learn with one product, master what that concept looks like and what that process looks like. Once you get really good at something, start entertaining other income sources, meaning other products that you can bring into the product line, because rather than bank it on that one product to do 100% of your revenue, if you can do 2 products, it does 50%. One falls, you still have something to keep the float. Going back to the things that we have reoccurring expenses on, rent, employees, gas, hydro, all these little things need to be compensated for. And I think that's super important to understand from a budgeting standpoint, that a business is always going to have ongoing expenses, so there's no opportunity to have like down months.
Yeah, well, and it's not like you just can't pay your hydro or you can't pay your employees 1 month because it's a little lower. Like, sorry guys, like, you're not getting paid this month. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? So, making sure you have that and having a little nest egg of, funds for those times where that happens is really big. And utilizing, good debt, building enough company rapport and financials and keeping everything up to date so that you can go and get a loan at like a 3% or a 4% to kind of get that capital to grow your business if you don't have that kind of savings banked up already, and that's really big. And that kind of ties back into making sure your taxes are paid, making sure you have a good accountant, making sure that, you keep accurate records of your financials, because if you don't do that, you're just closing the door to all these opportunities for that down the road, right?
Yeah, I always talking about financing or debt and all that kind of stuff. I used to look at it like me being grown up in a family that was like save, go get a 9 to 5, get a salary, yada yada yada. I was at the mindset of like credit card debt's bad, like all this kind of stuff is really really bad. But in business, it's all about how you use that credit to grow your business. Exactly, leverage is the word.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people forget too that not only do you have to keep your business good, but you got to keep your personal good. Because at the beginning, they're going all off your personal credit, and if you have shit credit, they're not going to give you anything because they want you to guarantee it, So that's super important, when you're 19, get a credit card, make your payments, build up that credit history so that when you start your business and you want to go get that credit, for the first couple of years, it's generally, I think, 2 years that they want financial statements for. So up until that time where you have 2 years of business history, they're going to be relying on your personal credit the whole time, right? So making sure that's always good, making sure you're paying your bills on time, keeping that in good standing is super crucial too. And I wish more people kind of told me that when I was younger and before that. It's taken years to get back to it, and luckily I figured it out early, so it wasn't a big deal. But as I said before, I know people now that still don't have that set up, and you got to set yourself up for success. And 100%. If you don't, it's just going to be harder, right?
No, I agree.
One thing when you're talking about financials as well. So High Deal last year did 2.1 million or so, and this year 6 to 7. So you guys are probably going to do 9, maybe 10 million this year. What made that change happen? Like, that's massive year-over-year growth.
It really comes down to scaling and having really good people. I've been really lucky to have really good people in my corner. I want all my employees, to come into work, and I don't want them to feel like it's work. That's something I really strive for, and I always want them to be happy. That's why we don't really treat, at least from my perspective, I don't really treat my business like a regular corporate business. Even though we are a corporation and all that, I don't treat it that way. We have open, holidays. I don't think I've ever said no to any of my employees taking vacation time. I don't sit there and say, hey, you got to be here at 9 a.m. and you got to work for 8 hours and you got to leave. It's stuff like that makes people not want to come into work. And I don't want them to be like that. So my kind of mantra that I live by as far as business is I give people enough rope to hang themselves with. So I'll give you all this freedom. Here's are my expectations. Don't mess it up. And if they mess it up, then it's on them 100%. And everyone that I've had has been really good with that. And I find that from going to a business before where it wasn't my business, but I was running the business for someone else, and I had to basically listen to what they wanted me to do, which was the traditional way of you got to be here 15 minutes early, you got to fucking put in your 8 hours, your lunch is from 12 to 12:30, and that's it. We had such a high employee turnover, and people didn't want to be there. And I said to myself, when I start a business, I'm never going to do that because I don't want them to be like that. I want people to feel comfortable coming to work and feel like they're not being oppressed by someone above. And I mean, it shows, as I said, we've had an extremely low turnover rate. I can't say anything but good things about my employees. They've been really great, and it's really them that's gotten us to this point. And I think that's just something that a lot of people miss is they get focused on, the end goal, but they don't realize that, you can't do everything. And I think that's something too that's really important is delegation. And learning about delegation really early is huge. And, you got to find people that are smarter than you, I'm not fucking smart at accounting, so I hired a really awesome person that's super good at accounting. I don't know anything about design as much as, like someone that would need to do that. So I hired, someone that's amazing at design. And you have to be able to delegate those things. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to scale. And that's something I think a lot of people have issues with, is letting go of that control. You have to hold people accountable, but you can't micromanage everybody and control everything they do. It's never going to work out. People are not going to want to be there. They don't want someone breathing over their neck every 10 minutes, being like, "Why didn't you do this?" So, keep holding them accountable, but being able to delegate is, I think, one of the most important things you can do in scaling a business that I think is really missed by new entrepreneurs and even people that have been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, 100%. And the ability to say no, because I'm a yes man. Well, not as much anymore, but I love doing things myself because I love when things are perfect. I know I can do it the best for the majority of things. Obviously, I don't have a skill set where I can do absolutely everything, but the ability to say no and be like, somebody comes to me and asks for help, I'm like, no, that's your job. You should do that. So
exactly.
And it's not, and I think a lot of people, they're like, they got to do everything for their employees. They got to do everything for the employees. But we hire them because we trust them and know that they're good at what they do. An employee grows when you get them to actually figure stuff out by themselves. 100%. Because they have to go and think, they have to go and problem solve. And it's us as the owners trusting in them that they have the skill set to be able to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot of issues that new business owners and entrepreneurs have when they start to scale is they kind of have this God complex where they're like, this is my business, I know what's best. If I tell you to do something, you need to do it. And there's certain scenarios and certain situations where, yes, I think that there's times where you have to put your foot down and say, look, this is the reasons why, and this is the reasons why we're doing it. However, I think that, it's way overused in a lot of situations where owners are telling people what to do. I don't tell my guys what to do a lot. I mean, out of the times that we talk, it's very little. It's more like, hey, I think we should do this. What do you think? Because I trust them. I trust their opinion. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. And 100%. If you don't give your employees that power to feel like, they're doing something, they're not going to want to be there. And, kind of being able to navigate the difference between an employee that's, not being efficient, that's wanting to be argumentative and stuff like that, and being able to separate that between an employee that just really cares is huge. And everyone that works for me, for the most part, actually everyone now, I can't say at High Deal, at least other businesses may be different, but everyone at High Deal, they treat the company like it's their own. And when someone gets upset or someone gets angry or there's a heated conversation I have with someone, I know it's not because they're trying to be, annoying or trying to, cause an argument. I know it's because they care so passionately about the business that they want the business to succeed as much. And that's what you want. You want people like that. And
100%.
You're not going to get that in the traditional way of running a business. And that's just, one of the things you got to be able to do if you want to scale to these huge points, right?
I agree. Autonomy, especially with the new generation coming up and about, there's so much different opportunity that people can do. And people want to feel like we call it entrepreneurship, or that's what it used to be called, entrepreneurship. Inside a business, growing a business. Make them feel like they have a portion of it. And again, you don't make people come in at 9, but I'm sure there's people that come in before 9 o'clock. Because they're passionate in being there, or stay past 5 o'clock because they're passionate in being there.
Exactly. And that's, the more you give them the freedom to do that, the more they're going to want to do it. I have guys that come in on the weekend and work for 6 hours. I have guys that come in at 8 and they leave at 5, or they come in at 8 and they leave at 3. But at the end of the day, as long as it's getting done and we're not losing, or they're not doing the they're not missing any expectations that are expected of them, then I'm never going to say anything. I think there's certain positions obviously that require you to be there at a certain time, like a shipping situation where we have to ship things out or be able to accept packages at 9 a.m. So you kind of got to be here. But for roles like sales or design, things like that where it's not really needed for that, I think giving the employees the power to, as I said, give them enough rope to hang themselves with. If they decide that they want to slack and they want to come in 3 hours a day and they're not doing anything, well, then that was their choice. 100%. It's not for anything lack of, I gave you the opportunity to do that, right?
No, I 100% agree. I think if you can get them involved and caring about the company the way that you do,
Yeah.
you're at the end of the day building a culture where everyone is building the vision together, right? Exactly like you said, they are having frustrating conversations with you or other employees because they simply care and they want to make sure that they're putting their customers first or whatever the company first at hand. It's interesting to hear your journey because we actually had someone on podcasts speaking around going from an entrepreneur to a CEO. So an entrepreneur is someone that works the additional 50-hour weeks on top of their job trying to figure it out. And then over time you realize that scaling to $17 million over a 4-year period, that's simply not something that you can do by yourself. And delegating it to people that you trust and getting them involved into the vision at the end of the day creates more of a CEO position where you're just delegating as opposed to you doing every single one of the things. Because again, there's no scalability in being able to do everything by yourself.
Yeah, well, and there's only so many hours in a day, right? I mean, you just got to be able to take that seat back. I mean, like I foresee in the next 2 to 5 years that I probably won't even be involved with the day-to-day of the business. I want to hire a CEO and a president and a director of sales and hire my guys up to make them be that next person. So
Gotta step out. I think there's a shipment here probably.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that's exactly it. And one other thing as well, and I guess we can kind of touch on this as well, but as you continue to grow, as you continue to make more money in your business and just in life as a whole, and now it's a conversation of investing. Like, where do you spend your money here? And like, how can I have a piece of pie here, 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 here? Because if you want generational wealth, if you want wealth for yourself, for families, for years and years to come, you can't just have it with one business. That's like, like investing, for example. If you have all your eggs in one basket, it's not going to do you so well.
Well, and who knows? I mean, it's so hard to say. I mean, there's been countless companies that just overnight and they've gone bankrupt and they just cease to exist, right? And putting all your eggs in one basket like that is just, as you said, like investing. It's just not a good idea, right? You have to have those different income streams to be able to do that, right? So that's really important, I think, for sure.
Absolutely, being an investor. And that's a whole different mindset as well because, again, you're now taking on potentially more risk. You could lose more money, of course, but if you build out a skill set in one business, it's very easy to take it to the next, and to the next, and to the next. Which is why, like me, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm huge on processes and systems because I know that, me having a system for hiring or what I like in a person here is going to be implemented in every business to come. So
well, and that's something that like at High Deal we've like slacked on, to be completely honest, is processes. Like, don't get me wrong, we have our processes, we have our ways we do things, but we want to eventually get like an ISO certification, and something like that requires like lists and books of SOPs, right? And it's something that makes the business so much more efficient. So we've really invested a lot of time and money into that in the last like 6 to 8 months to get us to that point where everything is standardized, everything is there. It's really easy to onboard new employees, really easy to just put someone in a role and say, here's your book, this is your SOPs, and it's something that someone can be onboarded in like a week instead of 3 months type of thing, right?
Totally.
So I think that's huge. And like just touching on too, like the employees as well, just kind of backpedaling a little bit. I think a big thing that a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners miss out on is, one, hiring within your organization, and two, kind of, putting yourself in your employee's shoes. I mean, everyone's been an employee for someone, and, at the end of the day, I think it's a really bad idea, unless it's some sort of strange thing or a very specific skill set job, to hire from with outside. With everyone in the business, like I want them to go up to the next level. I want my sales reps to move up to sales managers. I want my sales managers to be, directors of sales or territory managers one day. And I want them to be wealthy. Like I want to see like all my guys pulling up in Lambos and like nice Aston Martins and stuff like that. Like I want them to be successful. I want to see that. And I think that a lot of people get greedy and they kind of just forget about their employees, and that's how you lose them, and that's how you have high employee turnover rates.
100%.
And especially if you have like really good team and then all of a sudden you bring in a director of sales or a sales manager, but you have an all-star that's been killing it for 3 years. I mean, what do you think he's going to think, right? So, and I think that gets missed a lot too.
Hurts company morale for sure, and we see that a lot. And when I worked corporate, it was hard being managed by somebody that's so brand new, especially like sales. When I was in a sales environment, it's hard to trust somebody that you haven't been around.